Hello and welcome to you all. I'm Barbara Brown, Clinical Director with Redbird Therapy, and I am so excited to be here tonight with Lisa Catallo from BC, who's going to talk about the ins and outs of owning and operating a group practice. And there'll be time for questions, and there will be time really just to learn from her wisdom. She's actually been owner of two different practices. And I will share personally, she was my business coach when I came into group practice, and she kept my feet on the ground. I am eternally grateful to Lisa. She's smart, she's funny, she's heart-centered, and she's doing really great work with group practice owners across the country. And Lisa was going to be our final hurrah in our 5-part series for the Private Practice Essentials, but we just had a 6th workshop added, and it will be in May with Jana Sang, who is a wills and estate lawyer. And we're going to be talking about both personal and professional wills and estates, how to make sure that your practice is safe, and you're looking after the ways in which our personal and professional lives overlap. So check that out. It will be coming up. But now I'm just going to hand it right over to Lisa.
Hello, everybody. It's very nice to be here. I am more used to interactive, so it's going to be a little different to be the person who's on the screen. Usually I'm used to watching somebody on the screen. I have put together a bit of a presentation on what I believe you want to consider before starting a group practice. Feel free, like Barbara said, to ask any questions as we go. And if it's something that she feels like it's good to attend to right then, well, she'll interrupt and let me know. Otherwise, we'll definitely, we have time at the end for questions and answers. So I'm just going to share my screen. Where did it go now? There we go. Hopefully you can see that. So you're here because you're considering a group practice. And you might wonder who I am. My name is Lisa Catallo, like Barbara said. I have been a group practice owner now for over 6 years. I had a group practice with a partner, and then after that ended, I started Panorama Wellness Group, and we now have 2 locations. We've got 12 contractors right now and 7 renters. When I started the first group practice, I really noticed like there was information out there for Americans who wanted a group practice, and there wasn't really anything for Canadians. Over the last few years, there's been a couple more Canadians that have come on the scene. And also at the same time, recognizing it really felt like group practice owners really kept to themselves. So then it felt like I went from my private practice making my world feel a bit smaller, and then as a group practice owner felt even smaller. So I wanted to create a place like, how do we connect? How do we support each other and learn from each other? Because there's enough clients to go around for therapists, and there's enough therapists to go around for group practice owners. So that's a lot of where I've been coming from, and really supporting people who are starting and growing a group practice. I love those aha moments, and also just finding a fit for you. So as many people as I've worked with, I think there's that many ways of being a group practice owner. And so a lot of the stuff that we're going to talk about are like baseline or important markers to have, but also you're going to tailor this to what you, who you are and how you want to show up for your group practice. So what are we going to talk about today? What will you learn? We're going to talk about the highs and the lows. So what are some of the top struggles and rewards of being a group practice owner? I really feel like it's important to understand your why, because it is going to be hard at times, or you're going to be enticed by shiny objects. And so if you can come back to your why, if you know what it is that you're doing here, it just makes it so much easier as you're making those decisions. And then the foundations, what are, we're going to talk about some key steps that you want to take and consider before you bring on your first associate. So why do you want a group practice? There are a lot of rewards in having a group practice. One of the things that you want to think about are some things that you can measure and fully experience. So I went through first of all, come back to this one. So a lot of times when I talk to somebody who is thinking about starting a group practice, I get these reasons for starting a group practice. I have a full or overflowing caseload. So I don't want to miss out on those clients that are coming to me. A lot of us want to have a team around us. We want to feel like we're not doing this alone. A lot of people start a group practice because you want passive income. And I kind of laugh. Barbara's laughing, chuckling too. It does not passive income. It can be additional income, but I wouldn't say it's passive.
It is all hard won.
Yep, it is definitely. A lot of people say I don't want to work so much. I want to, I don't want to be seeing clients so much. And a lot of like, what does work-life balance look like? So maybe bringing on an associate or a few would help address that. So I asked a bunch of group practice owners, so what are the things that are a benefit of being a group practice owner, and what are some of the struggles? So some of the things that people listed as either they started a group practice hoping for, or they're experiencing these things already. So being able to not worry about taking time off without losing my income. Having joy and pride in the team and in the services that we provide. One person was, I really want to be able to practice radical generosity. So that translated into clients and their therapists. And Barbara, you weren't the one that listed that, but I would say that that probably is something that you have really practiced, that I have admired as well. Some people want to take a year off, or they want to go travel and still be able to make that income and not worry about where that money is coming from. One of the things, a lot of us are women, and so this comes up quite a bit. I want to show my kids that I can do this and I can succeed. I want to put that fire under them and show them what can be done. On the opposite side of that, I asked, what are some of the struggles of being a group practice owner? I wanted you to hear these because I want you to walk in with eyes wide open. One of the things as a coach for group practice owners, I think it's important as you're considering a group practice, it's just as important that I help you start a group practice as identify that maybe a group practice isn't for you as well. So one of the things that comes up is it's hard when people are upset with me because of things that I have put in place. And this person also said, there's a balance of being in a helping profession and wanting to care for people, but also how do I keep that business hat on and make business and financial decisions? It's hard to be an entrepreneur because I spend so much time thinking about the business outside of seeing clients. It takes a lot of energy. There's something that motivates us and that is fulfilling in that. But also sometimes it would be nice to just leave that at work and not be thinking about that all the time. One of the things that I talked about at the beginning, like it felt like as a group practice, it felt like my world got a bit smaller. So this person also said, so after 15 years, it just can feel really lonely because all the decisions fall to me. The time spent on the business, we talked about that a bit. People don't necessarily understand why we make the decisions and that there's bigger implications for them. And fear that the income won't be reliable. And I just realized that I doubled that up. I apologize for that. Um, so if when you're looking at those things, you can see why, okay, let's really make sure I understand why I'm doing this. What is the motivation? Who am I trying to serve? What is the purpose of doing this? So some of the questions that you want to make sure you ask yourself is, what needs am I meeting for other people? So what will set you apart from group practices in your area? Do you have a niche? Do you have an ideal client? What kind of environment do you want to create for your associates? So the first one is about clients, typically. What kind of other clients are being served and what sets you apart? And then what sets you apart for associates? And then who is the ideal client and the ideal therapist for your group practice? And a lot of times we don't really spend time thinking about this. You have filled up your caseload. Maybe it's been by dumb luck. Maybe you have a really great website or you have a Psychology Today profile and you don't really know who it is that you want to serve. And so really starting to look at who am I attracting? Who do I like to work with? And then that translates also to the kind of people that you want to bring on. What needs do you want it to meet for yourself? So again, what kind of leader are you? Do you want to be like involved and in shaping people and creating a therapist that you would like to go and see? You might want employees. Or do you want to be more hands off and everybody just comes in and does their own thing? Thinking about maybe you want renters or contractors. And so knowing how much you want to invest of yourself is important for reward and for setup. What are your actual financial goals? So a lot of times I will sit across from people and they'll say, I want to make more money. So how do you make that like measurable? What does it mean to make more money? And is it actually more money that you want, or do you want to see less clients and have more flexibility? And that's your trade-off with finances. What is your ideal client load versus leadership load? As you bring associates on, you kind of trade caring for clients to caring for your team. And so again, what kind of leader and what kind of life do you want to have as a result of this group practice? And what kind of energy are you prepared to put into a group practice? I would say that it takes a good 1.5 to 2 years of really hard work to build the kind of group practice that you want and feel like it's sustainable, feel like you have the processes in place and the team that you want. Some people have proved me wrong and have done that a lot sooner. I would say consistently prepare for it to take about that amount of time. So these are the steps that I envision you want to make sure you have in place. There's a bit more in place or that you want to consider, but these would be the key elements that I would suggest you really take a look at before you bring somebody on as an associate or start a group practice. So we talked about determine your why. And I used to use the word business plan, create a business plan, but usually people's eyes glaze over or they get a little bit nervous about what that means because we think of a business plan as being somebody's going to look at my numbers and they want it to be really professional. And what I really mean with this is just set out that plan. What is my dream? Who am I serving? What is my budget? What do I want to accomplish? And putting that down in writing is really important because then you can come back and look at it. You can check in on it as you're growing. When you're selling people to come and join you, you've got the wording already because you've worked on that either in a blueprint or a business plan. You want to create a realistic budget for yourself. So you want to determine as many costs involved as possible. And this is so that you walk into it knowing what you're like a realistic number, But also, a lot of times I am talking to group practice owners and they'll say, I really want to provide a good wage for my therapist. So I'm just going to give them a 80-20 split so that they will stick around. But then you haven't actually looked at your numbers to make sure that that's sustainable. And then you get a year or two into your practice and you're like, so I'm seeing 25 clients because I can't stay afloat. Because I am trying to take care of everybody else. So being realistic, if you're doing a split, set a good split. If you're paying a wage, make sure that you're paying a good wage, looking at your numbers. And I'll show you a sample budget. You want to create a good, solid contract. And another thing that I hear a lot is, hey, can you share your contract with me? I would really encourage you to contact your own employment lawyer. Have the questions, have some of the information that you want to have in that contract to save yourself some money, but they are going to ask questions and they are going to develop a contract that fits for you and what you're wanting, as opposed to what fit for somebody over in Manitoba, kind of thing, who runs a totally different group practice than you do. You want to make sure that you have systems in place. And so when I say this, that doesn't mean you're locked into this is how you do things forever. But you want to start outlining the procedures that you want in place for the major systems in running a group practice. And we'll touch base on this in a bit as well. One of the things when we had started our first group practice, we were totally brand new, figuring out what we were doing. But when people came for an interview with us and they knew we were new and we said, okay, so these are the next steps in our interview process, and these are some of the systems we have in place, that actually gave them more confidence in joining us, even though we didn't have the longevity, because they knew that we were thinking all of this stuff through. And then you want to think through your interview process. So what does it look like for people to apply with you? What kind of person are you looking for? How will you go about onboarding, thinking through some of those things as well. So what goes into a budget? I put this part first, the GPO investment. So GPO is group practice owner. A lot of times we don't even think about this when we're thinking about how much do I need to make. So how much is your time worth? Your time and the energy that you're going to put into running the business, taking care of therapists, taking care of your admin staff, and all of the marketing efforts that you're going to take. Put a number to that. How many hours do you think that would be? And that, like, it's a nebulous number. It's hard to put that number on until you have been doing it. But the more that you keep that in mind of how much is my time and energy worth, am I making sure that I'm compensated for that? It helps you set that rate that you want to give to other people and just keep that bigger picture in mind. You want to consider, if you're having a physical space, think of all of the things that go into that. How much is it going to cost you to buy furniture, get the printer, and make sure you get a printer that I didn't get that costs you an arm and a leg of ink every time you have to fill that in. Are you going to have treats in the office? And that adds up to costs. The utilities, cleaning cost, those kinds of things. And then the other biggest cost is your people. And so start by looking around. What are other people offering in your area? Looking both at wages, what is being paid for a salary or hourly for therapists? And then also being curious, what are other group practice owners offering in your area? And don't just set that rate based on what everybody else is doing because you want to be competitive or you want to see people to see you as having value as well, but really like using that as a gauge, and then coming back to what do I need to cover admin support, third-party billing, time spent with talking with clients and that as well. I have, okay, sorry, I thought this would just link. Here's a sample budget that I put into place. A lot of times we don't budget.
Just so you know, the budget isn't showing. It's just the slide that says budget right now with the
Oh,
three
okay, it's
spots.
just showing me it. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll stop sharing and then I'll see if I can share that then. Thanks, Barbara.
Problem.
Where did it go? Okay, I'll show you this.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay. A lot of times we have numbers floating through our heads, but I wrote down all of the things that I could think of. These are not real numbers. I just made up numbers. I can share this with you too. You'll have access to this after. So it has a formula in here to divide this by 12 to figure out the monthly total. So how much will contractors cost you? And figuring in like that, what are you paying them 60, 70, 80%? Or what are they bringing in? Sorry. And if you have renters, I had both. I have both. And so that's included here for income. And then all of the expenses that you might think or not think. What do you want this to cover? So I wanted it to cover my membership. What would that mean if what I'm bringing in from my group practice would pay for some of my annual expenses? So here consulting is like supervision or getting coaching. If I join Chamber of Commerce for marketing, I want my group practice to pay for that. A number of different things. I'll just kind of scroll through it. I'm from BC, so we tend to go with Jane. You might choose OWL. Keep is a customer records management system that I use. That's another system and process that we have in place. I've actually moved to a different one, but if you have questions about that, we can talk about it. It just helps with intake. But this gives you a bit of a picture of like all the things to keep in mind. The contractors here, this would be the biggest part to play around with. So if I'm bringing in 100,000 and I'm only keeping 30%, so that means I'm only going to bring in 30,000 a year from contractors. If I have a clinical director, and how much do I want for my salary? So thinking through a lot of those items. Again, that'll be part of what I share. I'll be sharing the presentation, so you can play around with that if you're at that point. Let me go back.
And just while you switch over on your screen, Lisa, I will say, having been around group practice owners for the last few years, I have heard, honestly, enough stories of real life stories where people have stepped into becoming a group practice owner and their expenses outweigh the income, and they are essentially, like you said, doing that work. They're all of the costs of or the majority of the costs end up being carried by them and their clinical work, and so without some real forethought about managing expenses, I think this is one of the big places where it can be quite attractive to think about a group practice and what that passive income, not passive, that income, extra income might look like. But without a very clear budget, it's very easy in a larger company or a corporation to just watch money flow out and think, oh my goodness, when I was a sole proprietor, I didn't have any of these expenses. And in Ontario, I mean, you every year, if you're an RP, you have to get a search on your company, submit it to CRPO and get a certificate. And that's hundreds and hundreds of dollars that I had no idea I had to pay every year just for CRPO to give me a little stamp of approval. So there's a lot of unseen cash grabs in the industry that it's worth having a consult with an accountant in advance to think that, or with you, Lisa, to think through those on very tangible terms.
Yeah, I think I didn't know you had to do that for CRPO. One of the things in BC is we have WorkSafe, so WSIB equivalent for you guys, WCB, depending on where you are across the country. And if you don't do that properly, you end up paying a crap load of money because you have contractors. And so really getting that support, like you were talking about, talking to an accountant, how do I manage these things? What insurance is required of me? And when you start a group practice, your insurance jumps way up too, because you're covering other people and space and all of those things as well. So you want to take a really realistic view and crunch those numbers as much as possible. You don't know all the numbers. I think the biggest thing in that, you can make a group practice work. I've seen a bunch of people do that, and there's so many fulfilling things in it, but be as realistic as possible. I know one therapist, one group practice owner, and she started out with an 80-20 split because she really wanted to care for people. She was still seeing 25 to 30 clients a week because that was not covering her expenses, even though she had a really big team. So she's had to, not claw that back, because you can't really do that with who you started with. But the next people that she's started to start at a better rate. Same thing with employees. I was talking to somebody who switched over to employees, and she was like, we were not realistic at the beginning of what we could pay them and still keep our head above water. And so many times as therapists, we're like, yeah, but it's not all about the money. And, we're caring for people and we want to meet needs. But if you aren't taking care of yourself, and if you're not making sure that the money is coming in properly, your group practice isn't going to exist. So then you're not going to be able to care for those clients and for those therapists. So get input, talk to other group practice owners, talk to your accountant, do as much research as you can in this area.
And I would add to that this piece around having conversations with other group practice owners. For me, Lisa, when I started with you, I did some one-on-one coaching work, which was a good foundational piece for me to think independently. And then I joined your mastermind for a year. And I mean, those people I still have contact with, I still go to with questions, and it it really became my touchstone to feel not so lonely, but also they were encountering issues that I had not foreseen or had to deal with. And it just put it on the radar for me. And then I was bringing things that they're like, oh, I hadn't thought about that either. So the exchange when we get into a group learning environment like that is, just so valuable if you're going to walk down this path.
Yeah. Yeah. And just to know you're not alone. Somebody else thinks like you do and has lived through what you've lived through or are living through, or they save you some of the pain by, oh, I hadn't thought of that. Yeah. We wanted to think about your contracts and what goes in them. Quite often the question that I get is, will you share a contract with me? And I won't, but I will help you identify all of the questions that you need to go to a lawyer so that you spend less money going back and forth, but really make sure that get something that fits you. So here are some of the things that you want to be thinking about in a contract. think with the end in mind. So what will it look like if you want to terminate a contract? What if this doesn't go well? Or what if they leave? How does that process look? And spell that out, because when there's emotion, whether it's good emotion or difficult, it's so much easier to have it spelled out there and something that you agreed to in the beginning than trying to scramble at the end and figure out how that works. And it helps you keep that bridge between you and the therapist, as opposed to not ending as well. Do you want a contractor? If you have them, be clear about your expectations. A lot of times people want to put a non-compete in their contract that doesn't really hold water. I still have one in my contract because it's kind of like a, hey, just so you know, I don't want you working 5 minutes away somewhere else. But if they were to challenge me on it, it's not going to be something that anybody would say, yeah, you're not allowed to do that. But there's also a sense of like, how do you protect the clients and the work that you're doing in a way that also honors the contractor? Can they work somewhere else? Technically, they're supposed to work somewhere else. So while I might not want them to work 5 minutes away, they might have a virtual private practice. So how do we protect both of those things to be true? Or they might have a physical private practice. So naming that if I put the effort in, then you're like, if you get a client through Panorama, then you're seeing them through Panorama. They stay with us until you leave, and then this is what it looks like when you leave. You want to make sure that they are submitting their own invoices. This is something that I've heard some group practice owners choose to do for their therapists. I think that that's part of owning your own business. If you're an independent contractor, you own a private practice, and you should be submitting your own invoice. I make that as simple as possible for them, but that's part of keeping that line clear between employee and contractor. One of the other things that I hear a lot of is, can I provide supervision for my contractors? I want to help them be really good therapists. And I want to ensure that we have good client care. But that is one of those things that crosses those lines between contractor and employee. I read, I don't have the thing here right now, but in a number of different spots, and talking to my accountant, if I'm providing supervision, I'm directing how they work, which means they are, CRA would say they're an employee. And I actually was talking to a group practice owner this week who had somebody who is suing them for a hefty sum because they have said they actually were treated like an employee. So then they could be facing what they're being sued for, and then CRA, back taxes, and all of that. So if you want to direct how they work, if you want to provide supervision, you want to provide that insight, consider an employee, and be like, provide that for them. That's a great thing to want to do. Make sure you're doing it properly and clearly, keeping those lines clear. And there will probably be some more questions around contracts and that as well. We can come back to that if you do have some. These are some of the systems that I would recommend you have in place before bringing on an associate. Thinking through what your hiring and your onboarding process looks like. We're going to talk a little bit about the interview process. What does it look like for client onboarding? And so you might think, well, we're just going to do what I already have. So sit down and spell that out. Think through, what are the things that are important to you? How does a client find you? How do you book that first session? Are you the kind of person that says, I'm going to book 6 sessions right away, or are you just let that go, spell it out and make it as clear as possible, and then you can always go back and tweak it as you grow. But to have that in place gives direction to your associates and also sets clear expectations of what you think should be happening. And does that fit for the people who are joining you? You want to think through what invoicing looks like. So how often do you want if you're doing contractors, how often do you want them to submit invoices? How often do you want to pay them? What does that process look like? When I started out, I said I would pay within a couple of days. Now that we're bigger, I rely on my bookkeeper to do that. So we have very clear dates that everything needs to be submitted and when they can get paid. And then what does third-party invoicing look like? Are you willing to do that? Are you willing to engage with third parties? Because that can create another process that you have to take care of or your admin has to take care of. Does that serve the kind of clients that you want to be bringing in? You want to think through what kind of systems you want in place for taking care of clients. So that's everywhere from what do you want your website to look like? How do they tell you that they want to have a consult or a first appointment with you? All the way through how do you picture closing? So again, just really sitting down and writing through those systems. What does it look like for you to care for a client well? And what would you expect of people who represent you? Marketing and networking. How do you imagine yourself marketing your group practice? What do you expect of your associates, or if anything? When you are in private practice, you are the face of your business, of your website. When people come to Lisa Catallo Counseling, they are looking for Lisa Catallo. When you start a group practice, it really kind of switches from I'm the face of it to my associates are the face and I'm behind the scenes. So what does that mean for how I want this to look? So for me, I strongly encourage our associates to have a bio on our website, to have a video that introduces them. I encourage them to write blogs, and then they do all that face first thing, and then I'll do Google Ads for them. I'll do social media. I've got a newsletter that I write. We've got a marketing and networking spreadsheet. Take a look through that and I'll do an introduction of you. Encourage them of how to follow up with that. Some of that marketing and networking is also me still being face-to-face with other business owners and promoting my associates. But thinking through some of that, do I want to pay for Google Ads? Am I willing to put that money in? Do I prefer in person? And how does that look? And what do I want my associates to do or not do? A lot of group practice owners will say, it's my responsibility, so I'll take it on. Think that through. And then offboarding, what does that look like when a therapist wants to leave? Either you're choosing for them to leave or they're choosing to leave. Who gets the client? How do you give? So for me, I believe the client gets to make that choice. Really hurts. We were just talking about that, Barbara and I, when they choose to leave, because that's money that leaves my group practice. But I think the client belongs to the client. And so they get to have a choice of whether we give them another name within our group practice, or if they go with the therapist, or if we provide a community resource. What kind of notice do you want from people when they're leaving? How much time do you feel like you need in order to bring somebody else on and to care for those clients well? That offboarding piece is something you want to spell out for your systems and also in your contract. So talking with your lawyer, like what needs to be in the contract for that and what can be in procedures as well.
Lisa, there's a question here that from Pat that just goes back to a previous slide, and it's really about representation and identity um, and the complication of being a contractor versus an employee. So he's asking, how do you balance providing a particular approach to therapy to a particular target demographic, for example, for purposes of marketing, but without influencing a contractor's way of working?
Yeah, that's maybe I will stop sharing and take a look at the question just so I can get that answer that properly.
I'm thinking like Marissa's clinic is an example of what Pat's getting at here.
Yeah, so Marissa Little is, I forget where in Ontario.
Yeah, she's around Barrie area,
Yeah.
OCD North is her
OCD
clinic.
North. So she's one that I refer to quite a bit. So that's all they do is OCD. So she's obviously going to have people who are properly trained with OCD. With that, she doesn't, I don't think she requires a certain type of training, but you can say, before you even bring them on, that you want people to have a specific approach to therapy. So for me, we are a trauma-informed practice. So I want people who go beyond CBT and have other deeper trauma training. And so I'm looking for that in the interview process. When it comes to not like influencing their way of working, you can do like a group training. You can have peer consultation where you're talking about different ways of working with this specific demographic. You can screen for that before you even bring them on. I was just talking to somebody who's starting a group practice, and she wants to focus on play therapy and a certain type of play therapy. So she's entertaining the idea of, if you take these trainings, I'll give you a bit higher split. And so that might be a way, without like actually saying you have to, you still have the choice of doing that. I haven't talked to a lawyer about whether that actually fits, but that's one way that somebody is thinking of doing that.
And
Pat,
I
does that
really
answer
think
the
it,
question? Sorry,
sorry,
Barbara.
Lisa. Yeah, no, and I think it really does rest at the hiring, the point of hire, what your expectations are, what you're looking for in an applicant, so that people are coming in with a substantial base already in what you want them to be doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. There's a lot of focus in the upfront hiring process, and then it's a kind of hands-off in terms of their own way of working with the clients.
I think one of the things that I have learned too is when I started my group practice, I personally work with women and with couples who have survived a traumatic experience. And so I know how to market that. I know how to bring people in for that because that's my area. I wanted a group that would serve the kids of those people, or, a partner to that woman. And so we have a wide range of therapists in here. Sometimes that makes it harder to market because I don't work with kids, or I don't do neurodivergence. So in addressing a specific niche like OCD, or we're play therapists, a lot of times that can make it easier. It also narrows down like what kind of training is appropriate for that. And somebody would come to you because they have a similar desire to serve that same population. And so they want to learn from you and ask you for recommendations, as opposed to you saying, in order to work here, you have to have this kind of training. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Thanks.
Yeah. One other way that you can provide that is you can provide a group, you can purchase a training and share it with your group. it's where it crosses the line is if you buy the individual training for an individual. So you could also have somebody come in and do group supervision, and everybody contributes to the cost of that. But then you have somebody who works a specific way, who's, you know, influencing how you guys are all going to work. But it's not saying to a specific person, this is how you need to work. I'm realizing for some reason my presentation is missing one slide. So I'm going to go with this last one, and then I'll have to try and share a different way.
I think one of the tricky pieces around employment law is this independent contractor, dependent contractor, and employee status, which is a big decision to be made as a group practice owner, and has a lot of pieces in it, including this question, Pat, that you're asking. So it does mean sometimes a bit of a deeper dive on that, on the employment framework that works best for you. And one of the things I've learned is that I might offer, you know, group trainings voluntarily, because I have all independent contractors. And so it's an option for them if they would like to attend, but it's not a requirement, which protects that role of independent contractor.
And I think also like recognizing that having employees is not as scary as we think it is. I think we imagine it being that they have to be there for 8 hours a day and we need to pay them for all these things. There's actually a lot of flexibility in employees. You can have casual employees, you can pay them hourly, you can pay a split. So talking to an HR consultant or an employment lawyer can give you some ideas about some flexibility if that is the way that you want to work. There's something about contractors are independent. They like the flexibility. Their main gig is somewhere else. And if they're at a group practice, quite often it's gravy on top, or that's what actually feeds their soul, whereas the agency work feeds their budget. And so if you become that employer and they're fully invested in you, it can have a very rich relationship for you and for them. Well, we're talking about the interview process and how important that is. So you want to really think this through, and also know that this gets tweaked as you go. I was listening to a podcast with somebody in the States that has like I think he has like a $10 million group practice, and he reviews his interview process every 5 to 7 applicants, tweaks it a little bit. And so this is definitely not something that is written in stone, but can really help you as you get started. So when they start with the application form, how do you want to know that they want to work with you? How do they let you know? Be clear about the steps and then stick to them. If you're going to say that let's say you put a posting up on Indeed and you say you need to send me an email saying I want to work with Panorama Wellness Group, and then you see somebody who applies on Indeed, but they didn't send you the email, like you gotta be willing to stick to what you said you wanted. In asking somebody to send you an email, that shows a little bit more investment, and that they want to make that, that they're paying attention to detail, that they really want to be with you. And so it's okay to ask for those kinds of things. Your interview should be consistent and thorough. Think through what helps you determine if they have good clinical skills as well as a fit for your team. So my interview process is quite involved. I know this isn't for everybody, but I had listened to a book from somebody who Dave Ramsey has a book called Entree Leadership, and his interview process is super thorough. He has employees. So it made me think through like, what are all the steps? So we have an application. They have to send me an email that says that they're interested in joining us, and include their resume and a cover letter in there. And then from there, we do a screening call. So either it's me or my admin, and ask a couple of questions. Are you willing to be in person? Get a sense for personality. There's a few questions that we do there. Sorry, I missed one. I send them a form to start with saying, after I decide that I want to learn more about them, I send them this form. And it says, what do you think of trauma? Like, how would you describe it? What modalities do you use, so that I get a picture of that? I asked them a fun question, like, if you were on Amazing Race or Survivor, how far do you think you would get? That tells me a little bit about sense of humor sometimes. And also, like, if you don't know what Amazing Race is and Survivor is, and an employer is asking about that, go look it up and figure. And so I've had some people say, I've never watched the show, but I looked it up. And then I've had other people say, I've never watched the show, have no clue how I do. So another like silly screening, but still shows initiative as well. And then we do the phone call, and then an interview. And after talking to an employment lawyer, I try to always have somebody in the interview with me, if possible, so that there's two people. And in my interview questions, I now have a rating. So on from 1 to 5, how well do I think they answered that question? Because I'm going to go through and I'm going to meet with however many people. And if I can go back and see how I felt in that interview, it just helps me remember a little bit more about them and how convinced I was that this is a good fit. And then we do a case conceptualization. So either I send them questions, how do you conceptualize this client? Or I ask them to do a mock session with a friend and send me a recording of that. And then we do a reference check, and then I make an offer. So very like, let's cover all the bases. How are you going to show up as a team member? Do you like technology? Because I do. And then what do your clinical skills look like? And your steps will look different, but those are some things to think through. And then, so this is post-interview. I just named some of those things. At one point I had also, like, I'm really thinking about this person. I want you to meet our team. And so when we were small, this worked well. As we've grown bigger and people have other jobs, it makes it a little bit harder with timing. So I try and make sure that they meet our admin team, to get their perception of the applicant too. I'm just gonna, one more screen here, sorry. Okay, it's not showing up. My last screen was the ways that you can get in touch with me. And it's, how do I stop telling it to share? Okay, stop.
Now you're sharing. Yeah, now it's gone.
There we go.
You got it.
That's a lot of information in a short amount of time. Hopefully it gives you a little bit of a picture of things that you want to consider if you're thinking about starting a group practice. There's lots of wonderful things about being a group practice owner, lots of fulfilling things in there. The connection, building a team, serving clients, finding new and creative ways to serve your community. And just seeing that you can help more clients than what you're able to see can be really positive things. as for me in the community that we've talked about a little bit, there are different ways to get some of that support. I have a Facebook group, a free Facebook group for people who are considering starting a group practice. And I also have one for people who have a group practice already. And I keep those separate because there's different needs there. And so people who currently own a group practice, they want to be able to talk about some of those struggles and rewards and get help in that way. I have an email that I send out, regular emails, not annoyingly often, but enough to kind of keep you on some things to consider with group practice. I also have a membership that I offer. And so that is a smaller group of people who are starting or growing a group practice. I have the doors open this month and then not again until October. That is a place where we have resources and templates for you to use as a group practice owner. And then because that community part is important to me, we have on the one level of membership, we have 2 calls a month and going through what are some of the things that you need to know. So we take different topics every couple of months and really hone in on them. And then also have the opportunity to support each other. And then there's a mastermind, which is an even smaller group and just really honing in on your current issues or struggles or where you need some support from me and from the group of people there. I will also send that information on. So with Barbara offering this workshop, for people who sign up for the membership, before the end of the month, I will be donating $25 for each person to Kutana.
Wama. Yeah, Kutana Wama. I wanted to say thank you so much. It's an incredible offer.
Yeah.
And for folks here who don't know what Kutana Wama is, it's one of the initiatives that Redbird Therapy has in partnership with the Wama Center in Mombasa, Kenya, and they rescue, rehabilitate, and reintegrate street-connected children. And we have a peer international trauma consultation twice a year, June and September. And those dates will be published soon, and that's free, and it's on Zoom. It's an incredible conversation. And then we take a group to Kenya every year, and we have spaces open for this coming January. It's January 4th to 15th. We spend a week intensive with the Wema Center, really, truly a life-altering experience. And then if you want to stay and go on safari, you can. It's worth it if you came to Kenya. But we have subsidies for that, and we do the program works as a donation to operating expenses for Wellness Center. So it's a win-win. It's an educational program. It's a fundraising program, and it's an incredible cultural experience. So thank you, Lisa, for that contribution. It's really means a lot.
Are there any questions from any? Oh, sorry, Barbara. How do you want to dismiss people and people stay for questions, or how do you want to do that?
Yeah, I mean, unless it's a particularly uncomfortable question you want to do privately, maybe Lisa, you can put your contact information up in the chat, and then we send a follow-up with the recording. So you'll get an email from us through MailChimp, and Lisa, you can send me the where you want people to contact you, and we'll put that in with the recording as well.
Okay.
Any questions on the table? Samir?
Yeah, that's correct. First, I just want to thank you guys both for having these workshops. Really appreciate it. I speak on behalf of everyone that you guys are making the community a lot better, and I'm very, very grateful for it. I actually had 2 questions. One of them, I hesitated on if I should even ask it, but I know there's a lot of numbers that go behind figuring out the split between therapists and how much you get to keep, how much you're paying and how much you get to keep. Is there a fair range a fair market range for how much to expect if a contractor wants to join your practice, a fair range for what, the split should be?
Like a norm?
Excuse me?
You're asking like, is there a norm kind of thing or?
Yeah, like 60-40, 50-50, like.
Yeah, I don't think you're going to make money at the group practice if you offer a higher split than 60-40. If you are virtual only, I think there's a little bit more flexibility with that, because your costs are not as high. But yeah, I would say, would you agree, Barbara? Like 60-40 would be.
Yeah, and I would say my experience with it seems to be kind of the standard, at least with the other group practice owners that I know. And I have seen some practices offering up to 70%. And, uh, those folks I think have just generally had virtual practices so that they don't have large site costs, right? They don't have rent but like having a clinic and a receptionist and all those things actually are a substantive piece of your budget, right?
Yeah. One of the things that I have done, Samira, too, is so I do a 60-40. And when they have been with me for 2 years, then I increase that split to 62-38. And we also raise their rate at that time so that I don't actually take home less. They take home more, but I don't take home less as a result. And so you could think of things like that. Some people will offer a little bit higher split if somebody has like quite a bit of experience, because that's just more value to your group. But yeah, I would say 60-40 is probably your best bet. And the highest I would go would be 70-30, even with online or virtual.
And I would just say for like mine, I do it a little bit different than Lisa. So I have a 60-40 split up to a certain number of clients per week on average per billing period, which is a month for my associates. And then 65% for if they're higher number, if they're seeing more clients. That's one way that they have an opportunity to make a larger percentage. And the other thing is then my fees per associate are different. So some clinics have all the same fees. Our fees are clinician specific based on registration level and years experience. So you get right on our website, it says what my fee is, it says what Terry's fee is, it says what Liz's fee is, and they're all different based on registration. So there are different ways in which as a group practice owner, you're thinking about what is an incentive to keep people financially stable and happy and a part of the team, while ensuring you can pay the expenses you're responsible for.
Okay, I'm glad I asked the question. My second question would be, now, say you want to invite a guest to co-facilitate. For example, you're running an Indigenous group and you want a community elder. Do you guys have any insights for what you should look out for the dynamics, how they can change, what to look out? What am I trying to communicate? Just things you should know before you kind of do it. Things to be aware of.
That's for running a group or having them join a group practice?
Running a group, like co-facilitating the group, like coming in at the end, or just being a presence there. For example, as well, like having athletes and having a professional athletes join in who can speak on the topic of the day.
Barbara, have you done that?
Yeah, we do these workshops. I bring a lot of people in different venues. I think I would just think very specifically, what am I asking that person? What is the role I'm asking that person in for, and what is a model of compensation? So, For example, all of our workshops at Redbird, we offer free of charge. And so people are contributing. There, Lisa is contributing her time free of charge. Thank you very much. As am I, as are all of you who are attending, right? This is just a collective space to learn together. If it's a service that you're charging for, how are you going to compensate that person? And I would probably have a fairly simple agreement, even if it's just written in an email that says, you know, our group, we're running this group, you're going to attend 6 sessions for this amount of time, and we're going to pay you $30 an hour for your time. You can invoice me at the end of the group, and I will pay you by e-transfer at the completion of the service. So it's just, it doesn't have to be like a formal, you know, gone to a lawyer legal contract, but you do want to have some clear guidance written down between the two of you so you're both on the same page.
I think it's also like taking into consideration what kind of group it is. Is it processing? Is it psychoed? And so what does it do to that group environment if you bring somebody else in? And then being very clear about who this other person is when you start that group too.
Okay, thank you.
Pat?
So I was wondering what kind of broadly the expectations of contractors would be, and also broadly what the benefits or advantages for contractors would be in joining a group practice. So if they're giving up 40% or 40% of the hourly rate, what are they receiving for that? That makes it attractive for them to join.
Yeah. I think I'll start with the second question first. I think people join a group practice for a variety of reasons. They don't want to do the admin work. They want to walk in and have you do the marketing and networking because they don't like doing that kind of thing. They want to belong to a group or a team and have co-workers available rather than just going to their own office every day. And, it really depends on the person. So some people, quite honestly, they'll join a group practice to start to fill up their caseload and then go do private practice. And then they get to start their business off quite well. And I actually have had conversations with a couple of people that was their goal in joining me. And then other people are like, they've got another job or they've got a private practice. And so they want to be somewhere where they're aligned with values and approach. And so it just fits their, what they're looking for personally and professionally. The people who have stuck with me the longest don't like admin work and they don't want to have to find clients. And so they are quite happy to let me take care of that. And they also love our environment and what we're trying to accomplish. Pat, remind me of the first part of your question.
The first part is your expectations on the contractors. Then what you mentioned, blog posts, or you mentioned profile video blog posts. What are you typically expecting the contractors to do beyond the therapy hour?
Yeah, so I think that will vary depending on which group practice owner you talk to. I really don't want CRA to come to me and say that I've done it wrong. So I try and keep a lot of these things like making sure that they're clear. So for me, they need to create their own invoices and submit them on our timeline. But it's their job to make sure that they're billing us properly. I do say they need to have a bio on the website and a professional headshot. I will get professional headshots taken once or twice, about once a year. And I strongly encourage them, very strongly encourage them to get a video on that bio as well, because I think that that helps people connect with them. But if they don't do that, I'm not going to say you can't be here kind of thing. If they were an employee, I would say you have to have that on there. I will, even in the interview process, and after when we're doing the onboarding, I will let them know, like, these are the things that I see help build your caseload quickly. I would strongly encourage you to do them. I will help you do them. You don't have to do them, but it will take you longer. So that is, I pay $50 for a blog, for them to write a blog. And I will use that in our newsletter. I'll use that in social media. And there's somewhere else that I use it. So I just tell them, like, that gets you exposure through that. And I don't know how to explain it, but the people who write blogs for us, their caseloads fill up faster. And I think because Google likes it, SEO likes it, and so it lends credibility to us when people are searching for that topic. And with those people who are willing to write blogs, I will actually, like, hey, can you write a blog on, so one person specializes with neurodivergent. So can you write a blog about how neurodivergence helps people in relationships? What are some ways that that shows up as a strength? So automatically that contractor goes, oh, I know how to write about that because that's what I love doing. So how do I make it as easy as possible for them to write something, if that's something that I'm asking for? I think that they should be showing up on like networking or connecting with other people. I will tell you, out of 12 people, I have 2 that do that because they don't like it. So I can't force them to do that. And one of the 2 people that have done that, they filled up their caseload in 3 months. And whereas it's taking the other people quite a bit longer. So I'll use examples like that for encouraging them to do that, but they don't have to do that. The things that I think they have to do is show up on time for their clients, do good client work. That's another way of networking and marketing. I expect them to reply to our admin team within 24 hours because we're trying to take care of clients, and have the bio on the website. I expect them to submit their invoices on time or not get paid that pay period, because I have learned what that means for us and our time. And I really try to, for us, really trying to encourage a team environment. So we have monthly team meetings, try to make that valuable both for connection and for clinical, like we do something encouraging them clinically or business wise at each of those meetings. That's not, again, I can't require them to be there. We do a team retreat once a year and I can't require them to be there, but every year everybody has shown up. Because when you're talking about, like, why do you join a group practice? That's one of the reasons you do it, for that connection and that team and that support kind of thing. There's probably more that I tell them they have to do. Actually, I won't put them on the website. I won't have them start seeing clients until they've been on the website for 2 weeks, because that builds a client awareness. And then I have an onboarding tool that's called Waybook. And I want them to go through all of our procedures and stuff before and submit their paperwork before they start seeing clients. So that would be another thing that's an expectation.
And notes, I suppose, is one.
Yes. Oh, yes. Sorry. That's in the contract. Notes need to be done and signed before I'll pay them.
Thank you so much.
Yep.
There's a question in the chat here from Amanda. Do you recommend being incorporated before going into group practice?
I'm assuming, Amanda, that you are in Ontario.
I am.
You are. Yeah. That is such a fun question in Ontario. I just had a video or a couple of lawyers from Ontario who spent the last 6 months researching what it means, what are the requirements both from CRPO and like the social workers college.
Which would
It's
be
so
my
long.
college, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
OCSW, SSW.
And apparently there are repercussions for if you can incorporate and who you can hire as a result. And so, but there's nothing really specific. Uh, so it's very that's a complicated answer.
Yeah.
And maybe something we can talk about, or I can send you that recording from Miller Patterson as well. There are advantages and disadvantages to being sole proprietor versus being incorporated. Incorporated protects your business, it protects you if things don't work out, but also if a client were to sue a contractor, then it keeps your business separate from you. Also talking to your accountant about when is the right time to do that. My accountant told me, I'm in BC, so a little bit different, but she said not to do that until I was making more money than I needed to take home, just for different reasons. So there's a lot of different nuances with that. But if you put your email in the chat, then I'll send you that presentation too.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll do that. No problem. Thank you.
Yeah, totally worth watching that hour. Just because in Ontario, the professional corporations are a requirement, and they have much more stringent limitations than a general corporation.
Yeah.
And then you have this responsibility both to your college and to corporate, the incorporation, professional incorporation regulations.
Yeah.
Other questions? Samir's also asking, and he's put his
Yeah, I'm just copying
yeah,
over.
yeah, that's great. Are there other questions for Lisa before we wrap up tonight?
I have one more that hopefully wouldn't take too long. I guess I'm wondering about any sort of, I don't know if the word is guarantee on providing a certain amount of referrals to each contractor. How do you ensure? I mean, I'm at that place that you were saying, like I'm overflowing. I could take people on, but I don't know how sustainable that will be. And that's always a worry of mine is would I bring people on and start this process? And then, we know that practices can have ebbs and flows. So what if some of the referrals feel like they're drying up, or you take on too many contractors and there's not enough to go around? These are all questions I'm asking.
Yeah, I would start small. Start with one or two people, depending on how many you've got on your caseload, on your wait list. There isn't a guarantee. And there's no guarantee of how fast you're going to fill up. So when I said like that one person, she did everything that I told her to do and she filled in up in 3 months, that's because she really participated in the networking process. For somebody who is just going to let me do it, I actually say it out loud now in the interview, and then after, it's going to take me about 6 months to fill you up. And honestly, I can get you about 75% full if you don't do anything to help me out. There's something about when you participate that we actually can get you 100% full and a little bit sooner. And 100% full is different for everybody that you bring on. So that might be 1 day a week and it might be 3 or 4 days a week. It doesn't actually matter, which is, I really wish I could figure out why that doesn't matter, but it takes about that long to get them so that they can rely on that caseload in there.
And I think some of that depends on your what your funnels, your streams are for referrals in. That's been a big learning curve for me. So reputation and things will take you a certain distance. But that won't get you far enough for expansion. Really, that's been my experience. And then thinking about what are your active ways of networking and marketing to increase the flow in. And I would say for me, like I'm 3 years in, and I'm still very much in the learning curve about how to do that effectively.
I don't think there's one way. Like Google Ads helps, can be great, but you can't just rely on that. In person, like referrals and doing really good work is great, but that's also not going to 100% fill you up. Building relationships with other business owners, that's also a component, but that's not going to be 100% either. Unless you have found an amazing doctor that just refers everybody to you, which everybody hears as the golden, you know, that's what you want to have happen. And that is so hard to make that too. So there's lots of little pieces in it, which is why like just I say it out loud now that it's going to take 6 months because I feel that pressure to fill them up. Like I want you happy. I want you to stay. And also I need that income. So I need to set this realistic expectation for you.
Yeah, thank you. That helps.
Yeah.
Maggie?
Hi, thank you both so much for this. This has been amazing. These are maybe more particular specific questions, so I don't know. But I'm curious how often you do payouts, like how often, if it's once a month or every 2 weeks, just out of curiosity. And I'm also wondering about, because I was thinking about like maybe a system or like a after a certain amount of time, like after a certain number of and I think maybe Lisa, you said after 2 years you increase the split. And just wondering about, yeah, the viability of that. Like I feel like, you know, maybe after 25 sessions or 35 sessions, increasing the split, and if that kind of made sense.
I think that's why it's important to look at your numbers too, right? Yeah. And what you're comfortable with. So I know Barbara has like a graduated, and I had started out with that too. If you saw a certain amount of clients, then you get a higher split for this many clients. For me, it was just an administrative nightmare. And so I just said, this is your split. And so I chose after 2 years to increase that because you're sticking with me. And you're not requiring as much of the marketing and networking efforts at that point too. For payout schedule, I choose to do it every 2 weeks. I would love to do it once a month because of the time and energy that it takes to put into it. But I don't like being paid once a month. So I choose to do that twice. And we have become a lot more strict on that. Notes have to be done, invoice has to be submitted by a certain time, and it needs to be submitted in a certain format, because I don't want to spend that much time on it. We still have to check them all, and that takes time. So we've gotten a lot more directive on how that looks.
Yeah, I do monthly billing. Also, same thing, it has to be in by a certain time on a certain day. And I provide an invoice template that everybody can use. And I do the graduated, I do 60 and 65. So that means like some months a clinician will give me a 60%, and some months that same clinician will give me 65% invoice, but they have both of those templates available. So they just plug the numbers in and I review them. So that way it's pretty easy on my side because they all look the same, and I know that the calculations are working properly and things like that. Okay. Well, I think we may be at the end of our questions. Thank you all for being here and bringing really great questions to, for Lisa to share from. And, you know, again, a huge thank you, Lisa, to this time and the amount of work you have put in. And I know a lot of it actually unpaid just to build this Canadian group practice network. It is a really incredible gift to so many of us and for me personally. So thank you. And for tonight has been amazing, really.
Yeah, it was my honor. Thank you for hosting. And I wish you all well as you consider whether this is the route that you want to take.
All right.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank
Good
you.
night,
so much.
everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Lisa.
Hey,
Thank you,
Terry.
Barbara.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Annika.
Lisa and Barbara.